Now we're building a shipping container village here with a nice little dome glamp site just down the hill over my right shoulder. Now we got the first big guy right here that you've seen in previous videos, and then we've got another two coming up right here. One right here, two over there. And down there, we're building out a nice big platform to put a big giant 24-foot dome tent where we can do a luxury glamping or camping site. Now in today's video, we're going over the second phase of the build project, which is basically the foundation and then doing post and beam down on the glamp site. And my vision for all of this is to have you join me in the journey of building these two sites from the ground up so you can see how it's done. And in today's video, I'm gonna share with you the pricing if you're gonna do it yourself and if you're gonna hire a subcontractor or subcontractors, kind of like what I'm doing. I'm doing a hybrid model. Now let's get inside because it's starting to really rain and it's getting kind of cold. Let's go. So a few videos ago, I showed you the excavation of basically the whole build site out there, both for the shipping container home and the glamp site down in the little ravine. And I also showed you in another video how I precisely calculated exactly where those piers need to go based off the engineering plans using a technique or a method called hub and tack, which is going to be very important when we start putting shipping containers on top of it. Now we're getting the fun stuff because we're moving past just the excavation and moving dirt around, and now we're actually putting in arguably probably the most important thing of any build project, the foundation. Now remember, this is a fun passion project for myself, but at the same time, I also want to make sure it's a good investment because this is going to spin off into a much bigger project if and when this does go well and according to plan. But I am planning on spending on roughly $125,000 for both sites. Now I do have contingencies up to $200,000 if things really get out of hand and I go way over budget, but right now 125 to 135 is kind of the window of what I'm expecting to spend on this investment. The end goal of all of this is to increase the property value by roughly $300,000 and generate roughly $10,000 of additional income every single month. Meaning all of the work that you'll be watching me do over the next couple months should pay for itself within a year and a half or so, which is not too bad of a payout period. Now I know only about 15% of you are part of that cool club that are subscribed to the channel right now. But if you do want to join us and watch this entire build project unfold and see more content on real estate, short-term rentals, or just investing your money in any type of market, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up button just to trigger that YouTube algorithm. Thanks, I appreciate it. And if you don't think videos are enough, I am holding consultation sessions with individuals just like yourself if you want to learn more about how to get started either in construction, short-term rentals, or real estate in general. We can walk through all the red flags, the permitting, the financing, and put together a strategy that fits you and what you need to do. Email and information down in the description below. Now, as part of the first phase, it is foundation. Well, excavation and foundation. And just coincidentally enough, both sites were using pier foundations, which I really haven't done before other than for decking, because typically we do the traditional perimeter foundation, but this one with the container homes, we're using piers. And then as far as the glamp site, we're building this giant, almost 800 square foot platform deck that we're gonna put the giant 24-foot dome tent on. Now eventually this area will overlook the valley, and then also we'll have a fire pit on it, we'll have a grilling area, we'll have outdoor seating, and it'll even have its own attached bathroom. So as you can see, the platform deck is just a really basic, albeit very large deck with 18, maybe 19 piers that are 18 inches thick. So we really overbuilt and over-engineered this bad boy, but we wanted to make sure that it was super steady and it didn't slide down the hill or move or shift or anything. So what you see here is the post and beam basically done. And essentially that's just the framing for the deck, and everything else is just gonna go on top. Now this whole area here that you see that's all nice and neat was overtaken by giant boulders and 10 to 12 foot blackberry bushes that I had to use heavy equipment to get rid of and kind of flatten out this area. Now, before I did that, I couldn't really see what was happening here. And when it rains hard, there's a lot of groundwater that flows through here, because it's a natural ravine, which makes sense because water will typically go to the lowest point. And as you may know, water in building or construction don't go well together. So eventually what I'm gonna do, once it dries up a little bit, hopefully within the next 2 months, I'll have to bring an excavator down here again, and we'll dig out a big, probably 2 foot, maybe 3 foot trench, and we'll put a French drain to redirect all that water away from the piers and the footings themselves. Not what I was expecting to have to do, but it's part of construction. things change. All right, so now here we are at the bottom of the hill, and you can see that we're starting to do, or finishing the post and beam, which is basically the understructure for the platform, which eventually the dome will go over. Basically the dome will go right here, so it has access to this giant view. Now right here, if you guys can see this little area that's kind of blocked out right there, I'm building like a 10 by 8 foot shed for utilities, for like cleaning supplies, linens, and then also a fully functional bathroom. That's what's really gonna make this a glamp site, is that you usually have plumbing or running water and an actual toilet. Now in terms of the numbers for the glamp site, it's pretty simple. If I had to do it all myself, all the lumber, all the materials that you guys see in this video so far, which is basically for the concrete and the post and beam, the metal, would cost us about $3,700 to $4,000 in raw materials that you can get at any lumber yard or any building supply store. But once you factor in the labor and then the pump that we had to bring in for the concrete, obviously, we're looking at close to $12,000 to $13,000 just to get that platform basically up and going. So if I had done it all by myself, I'm looking at probably in the range of about $5,000. And then hiring another crew, it ends up costing us about $12,000. So there's a difference there, about $7,000. That's a $7,000 premium. And I'll talk more about this in a little bit, is that $7,000 premium, it buys me months of not having to do my own work, and also I can manage both projects. I would not be able to do so if I was trying to build either one by myself. Now up here at the top of the hill with the shipping container build, it's gonna be a little bit more complicated. Down at the bottom of the hill is basically just a glorified platform or deck. And those piers down there, we only had to dig about 18, 20 inches deep just to get below that frost line and pour those big beefy piers. Now up here though, we had to dig down to native soil, and that's the reason why I decided to use piers and not the traditional perimeter foundation, is because I've got about anywhere between 6 to 12 feet of fill dirt here, and it would have cost me a small fortune and a lot of time to move all of this dirt out of here to put in like basically a 10-foot basement underneath. And that would have been a ton of concrete and rebar that I didn't want to spend. So the better option was to dig these big holes, basically boring holes or using an auger on an excavator to dig down till we got to the native soil. And very broadly speaking, piers are typically the strongest and cheapest way to go. And so that's what I did. Now some of the holes were only about 3 feet deep, which is, I think only 2 of them were like this, but the rest were all between 5 to 6 feet, and some of them even 11 to 12 feet deep. And I couldn't have hand dug that. So this is absolutely a project that I couldn't have done myself. I couldn't even rent the equipment to get it done. So I had to hire and bring in subcontractors with the larger excavator and a big auger head to actually drill down and get it. Now this was exceptionally tough because my area has a lot of rocks, and basically any type of rock that's about the size of a football or larger becomes and can become an issue. Now here, I was fortunate enough to have rocks the size of small boulders that caused a lot of headaches, but we were able to break through them, and after a full day's worth of work, we were able to get all 21 holes dug out. So while I had the excavator and these guys out here, after we bored the holes, I noticed that they actually had the perfect bucket to dig a trench that I've been wanting to dig out for the last couple weeks, is that I have to run power and electricity down to both the glamp site and the container home, and I've been trying to hand dig this trench by myself, and through all the rocks, it's been nearly impossible. Probably gonna take me a couple weeks, if not ever, being able to get past these rocks. So I had these guys, I asked them to throw on that new bucket, dig out this trench for me, paid them an extra $100, and it got done within 30 minutes. Best $100 I've ever spent. Now, basically what I was waiting for the rebar. We use a lot of rebar. There's different sizes that engineers will call out for. In my case, we're using a lot of number 5s and some number 4s, which is, I believe it's a 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch thick rebar. And you can get this at any Home Depot or any local building store. But in this case, I needed round rebar. I needed actually over 400 rings of different sizes. And to have that all done on site is nearly, not an impossible task, but definitely asking a lot, and you'll be paying a lot for labor. So instead, I paid a metal shop to basically bend it for me, and it cost me about $1,000 for about 400 rings. I also had that same metal shop, or the metal fab, create these big metal plates with 12-inch studs on them. And basically what this is gonna do is we're gonna put this on the top of the pier, the top of the plate's gonna be exposed, and this is what we weld the shipping containers to. Now, after getting all the supplies here on site, what we needed to do next was basically the really heavy labor. This is where the guys needed to tie these rebar into what we call rebar cages. This is the skeleton of the piers that will really give it a lot of rigidity to keep it from moving them back and forth, or breaking apart. Now, insider secret. Now, I built a lot of my wealth by doing my own work, and I was tempted to do this myself. The problem with that is that whenever you do things yourself, you take away time and it takes a lot of energy. And so for me to do this by myself, I know it would have taken me several weeks, maybe even months, to tie 21 cages up to 12 feet deep all by myself. So I had to hire a crew, and I had 4 to 5 guys working on this basically for 3 days straight. And some of these cages weighed up to 400 or 500 pounds. It's just something that I couldn't have done. Now, it did end up costing me a pretty penny. All said and done, labor is going to cost me about $11,000 to get these footings poured, or to get these piers poured. Now, I could have saved that $11,000, but in all honesty, if I'm looking to expand this project and do more of it, I can't do it all myself. It's just physically very demanding, and it takes me away from doing all this other stuff like making videos for you guys. So I did write a check on this one, bit the bullet, and I hired a subcontractor. They did great work, super happy with them, and I'm just $11,000 a little bit poorer now. But it's gonna pay off because it didn't take me weeks or months to do. It only took me about 3 or 4 days. So these guys basically busted out the 21 cages that weighed up to about 500 pounds in a few days. And they put them in the hole, got them all lined up, formed it up, put in the sonotubes, which basically I also ordered from a local concrete company. You can get these at any basically concrete supplier. After the cages were in, this was all nice and simple, get things lined up, and away we go. Now, one thing I forgot to mention that's super important when you're doing piers like this, especially for a container home or any type of home for that fact. Now, at the bottom of each, not caisson, but at the bottom of each hole is that there's a lot of jagged rocks because it's not a clean bore out, right? So the bottom is gonna have like slough, it's gonna have rocks down there, all this stuff. You need to have that as flat as possible. And so basically what I had the guys do is if it was shallow enough, they would go down there, move the rocks, and then they would bring in some gravel, and then they would use just a hand compactor and compact it down. And why we want that is that when they pour the concrete, you want it as flat as possible. You don't want all this jagged nonsense that takes away from the rigidity or the stability of that pier. And also, inspectors won't pass you if they come in there and they see a bunch of jagged rocks down there. Now, through the magic of editing, this all seems like it just happened within a day or two, right? But in reality, it took me about over 2 weeks. And this was because of weather delays, supplier mix-ups, and then just schedule conflicts with the subs. Again, remember, we're dealing with 2 or 3 different subcontractors and suppliers all trying to coordinate on my schedule or what I want to get done. All of that said, that's part of construction. The sooner that you realize and understand that in construction, things just don't go according to plan. What's that old saying, that old military adage? No battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. It's kind of like that in construction. Now let's talk a little bit about the numbers here. I know that you're probably really interested in that. Now, if I had to do this all myself, I actually would have saved a bunch of money. I already told you that labor itself was about $11,000. Let me get my little cheat sheet here. So permits alone were roughly $4,000. The hub and tack to basically laser find the exact center of all those spots was about $600. Excavating, boring those holes and digging the trench was $1,300. All the materials for the rebar was about $3,500. And then, like I said, the labor was an additional $11,000. So all said and done right now, just to get to this point where the foundation will be done, you're looking at $20,000. Now, remember, my budget for this whole thing is $75,000. So right off the bat, I'm already almost a third away through my entire budget. But to be completely honest, excavating, foundation work, and then usually framing, or in my case, the metal work, are gonna be the 2 or 3 most expensive areas of this whole project. After that, it should be smooth sailing, but we'll see. So there's some pretty cool stuff going on right here, and I'm super excited to see where this build project takes us. And I want you along on that journey. So stay tuned for more of the content coming out. I'll be focusing a lot more on the shipping container project and the Glamp site, and I'll continue to make videos on real estate, getting into short-term rentals, and maybe leave even some more money investment stuff. But make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and then like this video again. It helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm, I think. And if you guys want to contact me or get in touch with me and set up a consultation session, let's do it. Shoot me an email just down below in the description, and we will set up a time where we can talk about all this stuff or create a strategy specifically for you on getting into your first or maybe your second or third piece of real estate. Until phase 3, I love you all. See you all soon. Kai out.